I think we are live on the Book of Faces. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to everyone joining us on Facebook. Today we are discussing our wonderful book of the month, The Romanian Ruckus by Sean Patrick Little. I am your hostess, I suppose you could say, Madame Askew, and I'm very pleased to be here with all of you. But I'm particularly pleased to introduce all of you to our guest author, Mr. Little. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Glad to be here.
And Mr. Little, I believe you are actually familiar with Lord Bobbins, that you have met him a time or two, and that it was your familiarity that led you to write this particular opus that we read this month. Is that correct?
Yeah. Lord Bobbins and I shared an office for several years, and that's an experience. He is very, well, you all know him. He's the center of the room at any given moment. And when you're the only person in the room with him, guess what? You're kind of drawn into his orbit. He is delightful. Eric and I met the first year of TeslaCon, actually, before TeslaCon even launched. When I first met him, it was May, and I think TeslaCon was late October, early November of that year. And he kept telling me about all of the stuff that he was doing, and he was showing me things, and I was rewriting scripts for him because Eric doesn't do grammar or punctuation. He kept telling me stories, and I would help punch up scripts. So I actually had a fair amount of a hand in a lot of TeslaCon stuff before I ever wrote the books. But one thing he kept telling me was, oh, you got to write novels. You got to write novels about this. People will love them. You got to write novels. And so it took me about, I guess, 7-8 years to figure out how to write the novels for it, because my initial tries were to take it from Lord Bobbins' perspective, but I'm not Eric. I can't do that. So I had to kind of figure out a backdoor into the world. And so that's where the characters that made it into this story came from.
Well, I really enjoyed your backdoor. Mr. Clark is quite the character. The other cast of characters are also very charming, but Mr. Clark really draws you into the world. And I have a question for you, Mr. Little. Mm-hmm. Did you feel like you were also drawn into the world of steampunk, not just as an author, but as a sort of devotee of the genre by dear Lord Bobbins?
Yeah, I was not a fan to begin with. When I first started sharing an office with Eric and he was talking about this stuff, I mean, I knew what it was, but I'd never really gotten into it outside of maybe like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie or the horrible Wild Wild West movie. I never really, it wasn't, I mean, I was aware of it. It was in the periphery. I just never really got into it in a major way, but when you start writing all the scripts and things like that, and you're trying to think of in terms of living in that kind of world, so you end up kind of becoming a fan. And I started reading other authors and looking for things online. There's a lot of fan-made YouTube stuff out there that's very, very good. People are putting a lot of time into. So I started doing a lot more research and just exploration in that genre.
Oh, excellent. So you were already writing before you wrote this. Do you have a genre that you particularly love to write?
Yeah, it's whatever I'm writing at the moment. That's my favorite one. I've bounced around to a lot of different genres. I'm pretty impressed by authors who can just stay in one genre, because I like too many different genres to do that. I want to, if you put me to a wall and told me I had to pick one and only one, it would probably be high fantasy. Just, swords and sorcery. I like that. That's what I grew up reading. But, strangely enough, I haven't written a high fantasy novel. I've written mysteries. I've written a little bit of horror here and there. I've written a lot of comedy, post-apocalyptic adventure. So I try to get around. I have too many ideas in my head to just be limited by one genre.
Well, I can imagine then that conversation between you and Lord Bobbins was rife with ideas because he's also an ideas-driven person. And as an author with too many ideas kicking around in your heads, um, you must have a plethora of ideas. Do you have anything that you're working on now that's a sort of pet project?
Yeah, I have several things going at any given moment. I have multiple things on my hard drive. I have a file on my hard drive that's just ideas and I'll start something and I'll write 30 pages on it and then it kind of dies in my mind. So it just gets put to the back burner. And if I can pick and choose from that later, so be it. I have a number of things on the hard drive right now, and I'm currently really writing 2 or 3 different projects at the moment. One's a screenplay, one is a sequel to the mystery novel that I just put out last year, and another one is a hard sci-fi type Firefly kind of thing. So yeah, I'm always working. You never stop working. That's the one thing that I took from, when you're writing, you're always researching writing, you're always listening to other writers. And I saw an interview with Guillermo del Toro, and a girl in the audience asked, how do you get over writer's block? And Guillermo said, I don't get writer's block. He says, if you have writer's block, that means you don't have enough ideas in your head. He said, you should always have more ideas than you can put down on paper at any given moment. And that really was the most helpful thing I've ever heard in terms of getting over writer's block. It's just to have a lot of different things. If you get stuck on one thing, jump to the next thing, move on. The ideas will come eventually, but you have to keep working. You can't just stop, and you can't act like you're a victim of some invisible blockage. Guillermo del Toro really said, if you have writer's block, if you can't keep writing, if you get bored by writing, if you get bored at all, he said, maybe you're not ready to be a writer, because you have to be able to continually churn out material. And that was really an eye-opening interview for me. And that was probably 8-9 years ago at this point, and it really changed my perspective on the art form. And really, I mean, I always knew it was work and not muses, speaking angelic verse into your head, but it really helped focus me and realize that I have too many things to say, so I have to keep working.
So, since you are someone who keeps a sort of plethora of ideas in your file that you have, do you work sort of by the seat of your pants, or do you also plot some of these ideas in advance?
It really depends on the project. I am a big fan of working from an outline when you can. When you can work from an outline, you will actually work a lot faster and a lot more efficiently, because you'll know, I have to get from here to here to here to here to here. And if you get stuck on point C, you can just jump to point D and start writing there, and then you'll figure out how to connect them later. However, for stuff that I haven't fully thought out, my method of working is usually to just start writing, because something will get stuck in my head. It might be a phrase, it might be a scene, it might be a character. I've written stories based on a character name that I wanted to use. Just I wanted to figure out who, I had the name of a character in my head, and I wanted to figure out who they were and what they were doing. So sometimes it's 25 pages, 30 pages of just figuring out what something is doing, and then stepping back and trying to figure out an outline for it. And sometimes it's 100 pages of flying by the seat of your pants till you figure out what's going on. And a lot of times when you do that, then you end up throwing 50 to 60 of those pages away because they don't make sense anymore. But sometimes you gotta, if anybody else has written here, sometimes you gotta kill your children, as they say.
Well, I mean, part of the draft process, right, is removing sometimes very large swaths and reworking them.
Yeah, I am one of those authors who I will write the first 2 to 3 paragraphs and then realize that the story is starting at chapter 4, or first 2 or 3 chapters, and then realize it starts at chapter 4. So then I got to just get rid of chapters 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not the only writer who does that, but it's a way of getting yourself into that mindset. Sometimes it's about just putting the pages down so that you can get the voice of the character or the voice of the story, and figure out what the pattern, what the beat, the cadence of the story is. And sometimes it takes 50 pages to do that.
Well, not to be too cheeky, but you can always save that work and publish it later as your own Silmarillion, like J.R.R. Tolkien. So
Yeah,
it all
that is
works
true.
out.
Absolutely.
So I'm certain more questions will arise as we go through our conversation today, Mr. Little, but I don't want to hoard you all for myself. So I'd like to go through and have a moment with all of our wonderful book club members who are here today. So I'm going to go through and I will call you by name so you know that I'm calling you, so you will know when to unmute your microphone. And then my question for each of you today is, what is something you liked about the book, or a scene in the book that you particularly thrilled about, that sort of brought everything to life? So you have an either or question. You can answer either part or both if it's, quickish. All right. Lady June Squill, I know you always have read the book and have some good thoughts about it. So would you like to get us started?
I had read the book, and then, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, because I'm using my speakers on my computer have died. I read the book and then I reread it today, and I've decided I really like Dolly Shaw, the woman, and I think my favorite scene for that is when, I don't care whether it's spoilers or not, where Clark finds out that she has a prosthetic leg.
Yes. Really marvelous.
Mhm.
Oh, and Fiona agrees with you.
Hello, Fiona.
I've heard a rumor that Dolly Shaw is a very pivotal character in the second book.
Oh, I started the second book just a few minutes ago, actually.
Oh, good. Oh, you're ready. I count on you.
I have Kindle Unlimited, so
So good.
I'm just hundreds of books a day.
That's lovely. You are an avid reader. You keep us up to date.
Well, I don't know about that. I sometimes forget. When I reread it today, I was like, oh yeah, that happened. So, Fiona. Hello,
Fiona's really going to come to book club today.
Oh, good. She's a beautiful cat.
Well, thank you, Lady June Squirrel.
You're welcome.
Our delight as always. Cindy, hello.
There we go. Hello.
Hello.
I too have Kindle Unlimited. So, yes, I read the first book yesterday. Read the whole thing through one sitting. Couldn't stop. Which,
fantastic.
for me is the sign of a book that I love, because I cannot put it down. I have to get to the end. And I've started the second book, and I have to admit, I also love Dolly. I love that she's strong and vulnerable, that she knows who she is. She knows what she can do. I just love her. I love reading when there's strong women characters in a book, and that she has such a good working relationship with Shaw. He doesn't look down on her. He respects her. So I like their relationship. It's not necessarily romantic, but it's one of, I think, mutual. It doesn't start off that way, but does develop into mutual respect for each other. And yes, my favorite scene was her leg, finding out about a prosthetic. That was just, in the second book, I don't know if you got that far, June, but that leg can do some shit.
Oh, exciting. I haven't read the second book yet, so I'm excited.
You will want to. If you love Dolly, like even in the first few chapters, it's like.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Thank you, Cindy. All right. Hello, Laura. Hello.
Hello. I think my favorite character in the book is Nicodemus Clark. I do enjoy all of the characters. All of them were great. And I did read the book twice. So, and I like Clark that he just kind of feels like he's done, but at the same time, he just can't turn down the mystery, I like that about him a lot. So
He is a very fun character. Also the dollars, I think, were very helpful. All right. Hello, Karen. Speaking of fellow authors, Karen Carlisle from Adelaide.
Hello. I'm losing my voice.
Oh,
We had
no.
a dust storm yesterday.
Oh, no.
And we've got a COVID cluster. Yeah, I actually haven't got the book arrive in the post yet because I always do paperbacks because I don't do e-books because I'm, old-fashioned.
No, all right. But perhaps
I don't stick in my head. I can't, I have this hate relationship with electronics.
It's all right.
Anyway, but
Karen, would you like to ask Sean a question then?
Well, I was going to say, I'm actually looking forward to reading about Tesla because he's one of my favourite characters. Well, historical figures, but yeah. I haven't prepared a question. I was going to say about what about Tesla, but I've got to wait and read it, I think. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll think of a question.
Yes.
I'll think of a question because I was going to ask about plotting and pantsing, but it's been done. So.
Oh, well, I'm cheeky that way. All right. Thank you, Karen. And now we have Beatrix and Corolius. Hello, my darlings. Hello, how's the airship?
Can you hear us?
I can. You both look very dapper.
Wonderful. Well, who goes first?
You do.
Well, I loved all the characters. They were well defined and had their own voice and way of doing things. Lord or Mr. Bobbins, that's Lord Bobbins. I think he was really well done. He could have been, just completely supercilious, but he wasn't. There was a lot to him, especially as we saw in the end. He was a person with a, very higher perception of situations than, people who are underneath, actually doing stuff. And so everyone really worked out to their advantage according to their abilities. It was really a nice piece of, writing to have that, separation of characters work together so very nicely. I like the feel of the book and Clark. he reminds me in a way of a character in a Mickey Spillane novel, especially with the opening scenes and his fist fight over a card game or something like that. And I like the whole tone of the novel. It's like, you got a call from a friend who you haven't seen in a few years and you meet in a bar and in confidence, he tells you his story. It's this wild thing, So
I love that.
Like that, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm eager to go on to number 2.
Excellent. Thank you, Corolius.
Well, I'm afraid that I can't be very original because, yes, the most memorable scene for me was Dolly and the leg. What can I say? That's. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's always nice to have something in Romanian. And I almost got out my Romanian blouse just, to.
So did I.
But well, I'll just wait until we can all, do something together and bring out all then.
Yeah. No. So Beatrix and I have engaged in not only Romanian dance, but Romanian singing a time or two. So we are very keen on Romania. And Carolius, I believe you've played the Romanian violin. Is that correct?
Yes, that is. And a little musikuța, the harmonica.
Oh, my goodness. I did not know that. Oh, my goodness. Also, I apologize. Duchess Fiona is very excited about everything today. So she's singing the song of her people. Well, more on that later. Dear Robin, it's your turn.
Hello.
Hello.
I think my two favorite characters, Nicodemus and Dolix. I really like the dynamic they had between them. It was made very clear these are working relationships. And I really liked the fact that he found her extremely attractive, but didn't need to view on it. And I was like, my favorite moment is she's no single, saddle, no nothing. She's on the horse and he's just like, I could marry her. And I was just like, oh. And then Bobbins is going, wait, there's going to be a chase? I would not pass. I would pass high tea with the queen to go on a chase. And I was like, yes, and we're off.
And we're off. Yeah, no, Dolly Shaw is an excellent character. And I agree that interaction between them is so lovely. A little bit of Tracy and Hepburn in there, I think. Oh, dear.
We have a cat.
We all have our cats today. A lot of cat action. Right. Thank you, Robin. Marissa, hello, my darling.
Hello. I don't have a cat because I'm at work, so when he's at home. So I'm catless in our squad. I mean, I have a cat, but he's not here with me.
He's here in spirit.
Yes. I'm here in the cat fur, which is always on my clothing.
Same.
I pull it straight out of the dryer and already there's cat fur on it. So
I feel that. So Marissa, what was your favorite, bit that you liked about the book, or a favorite scene, or both?
Well, everybody's already done Dolly in the leg, which I have to admit I thought was one of the most interesting scenes. But overall, I just thought there was some very funny, just like little witticisms, just little quips here and there. And one of my favorites I remember was that he didn't fly the Irish, Lord Bobbins isn't flying the Irish flag because he had a disagreement over the right components of shepherd's pie. And I thought that was a particularly funny moment, that he had all the other flags of the United Kingdom up, but he did not have the flag of Northern Ireland up because this disagreement over shepherd's pie. I mean, it was little bits like that I thought were particularly funny.
No, the wit is so good, isn't it? It's really lovely.
Yeah, it was. And, it was a good sort of Halloween read too. The banshees and, especially the initial suspense and the fear and him getting attacked in the cave and, when they came out of the cave. And I really kind of enjoyed that because I was reading that part right around Halloween. I kept putting the book down and coming back to it, and that was perfect for then. And then of course, the other part that I really liked was when they're comparing what they saw, and they suddenly realized that they all saw different things. That, the banshee that had blonde hair to one of them had red hair to another, and was a blue face with a huge nose to somebody else. And, they start to clue that the moment where they start to clue in that there's something, there was already something strange going on here, to be a sort of a Ghostbusters quote there. But at that point, they realized there really was something strange going on here. So I really like that scene where they start to piece together, there's something else going on here besides just, somebody trying to scare us. Well, somebody trying to scare us, in some way for some particular reason, and the fact that Clark sort of looks at things like a crime scene and his CSI aspect, the blood is too red, dried blood should be brown. And I also liked the sort of change in Clark, and I couldn't point to a particular scene, but he starts out sort of jaded at the beginning of the book. He's just kind of tired of everything. He's just cheated in a card game and barely escaped with his life, and he talks at first about how strange the rifle feels in his hands after all that time. And he really is you know, sort of old and jaded, even though, you know, physically he's not old, mentally he is. He starts out old. And
It
this
is.
and
It
that's
has
why I have a hard time pointing to a particular scene where he almost starts to sort of come back to life, you know, come back to some sense of himself after the rest of this.
No, I think he has a wonderful character development in the story. It's a really good arc, which is all to Mr. Little's, you know, skills as a storyteller. Sharon, all the way from Adelaide. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, it's good to have you back with us.
Hi,
Have you had
Karen.
a chance to read the book?
I'm sorry, I haven't, but it sounded interesting, so I'm grateful that you let me listen in.
Of course, we're always happy to have you. Sharon,
you.
do you have a question for the author?
I'm sorry, I don't.
It's all right. You don't have to apologize. You're up at the crack of dawn in Australia to be here at book club. You're fine.
Yes, that's right, Karen, isn't it? We're up at the crack of dawn.
It's tomorrow. You're
That's my
tomorrow.
excuse, so I'm sticking to it.
Well, it was 11 o'clock today because we're on daylight savings and you're not.
That's
So
right.
Karen,
the
you
opposite.
dobbed me in. She informed on me.
In
Cheeky.
winter, it's the other way around. We are up at the crack of dawn, yes.
Yeah. Well, it's getting that back and forth. Well, Sharon, if you have a question for the author later, we certainly would like to hear it. So
Thank you.
cogitate a bit. All right. Martha. Hello, Martha.
Hello.
How good to see you.
So I haven't read the whole book, but I've read more than Sharon. And actually, I was particularly fond of the beginning of the book. So the opening scene, and what made me interested in that was that it actually reminded me of the movie The Kingsman.
Oh yes, very
And
much.
the character Clark reminded me of the Colin Firth character. So when they're in the fight, I'm imagining him just just nonchalantly fighting. You know, he's not going to dirty his shoes or his hands or break his knuckles or anything. It's just going to be very. Anyway, I figured that set a good tone for the book. So what I've read so far, it's interesting to me, and I think it's going to lead to something good. So
Excellent. I'm so glad you liked it. That opening is a delightful pace setter for the rest of the novel. So enjoy. All right, Robert, you are back with us, and I'm so happy to see you, Robert. Robert is also an author, so he may have some authorly questions. Hello, my dear. How are you?
I am fine, and how are you doing today, madam?
I'm very happy to be here. So tell us, what did you like?
I liked some of the things I enjoyed were already mentioned by some of the other questioners, but one thing I liked was the way that the author generally worked in the details as he went along to give the impression of how the world was different. It was pretty obvious in some cases, like for instance, the airships and the goings on in Romania, but there were also the moments like where there's a casual mention that the Civil War went on for 20 years instead of just 4. That gave me the idea of how things went wrong and in some cases horribly wrong.
Yeah, no, those are some really wonderful touchstones in the book that sort of flesh out this greater world of the TeslaCon universe. So thank you, Robert. Deborah, are you with us? Oh my goodness, Cake is with us. Hello, Deborah.
Hi.
Hi. Do you have a favorite book, a bit you'd like to share about the book?
Well, I'm definitely Team Dolly. And I've read both the first and second book, and I'm really looking forward to the third book.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Really looking forward to learning more about Dolly's backstory. And I just overall really I think this is the first book. I've never been to TESPACon. I don't know anything about the con. I mean, I do know a little bit more now since I saw Lord Bobbin live, but this I think is the first book in this genre that really felt like I was in a steampunk world. Not that I was reading a book about steampunk elements, but this felt like it was like I just slipped right into that world. And I was surprised by that because I read a lot and I read a lot of different genres. But I try to read more steampunk stories, as there's a lot more that I'm aware of now than I was when I first started reading steampunk, which I think I started with Sherry Priest.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I for book one, my easy answer is Dolly.
Dolly's a great character. I really liked her too. Thank you, Deborah. And for those who have not been at TESPACon, this experience that Mr. Little captured so beautifully with the book of slipping into that steampunk world is really a hallmark of the TESPACon experience. So, Alicia, I know that you are multitasking. Are you here with us? Hello.
I am.
Hello. Good to see you.
Hello. I'm trying to think. I don't think I really have a favorite character. I think one thing I really liked about the book was just the banter.
Yeah.
Because it reminded me of when my friends and I gamed heavily. We did Top Secret, and there were 4 of us. I think the A Team, but it's written by Josh Whedon.
Oh, lovely.
And it's this weird mix of our group was this weird mix of Red and the A Team written by Josh Whedon, and a lot of the banter in the book kind of reminded me of that, of those characters that we'd created, and just the silliness. So I think that's kind of what I really liked about the book, was just that sarcasm.
Yes. No, the dialogue is wonderful, and I think you hit on something really lovely, Alicia. This book is sort of cinematographic in a lot of ways. I could really envision the different scenes on a screen almost running through my brain. So lovely points. Thank you, Alicia. Now, Bill, you don't think you got left out? Bill is the one everyone should thank. Bill recommended we read this book this month. He brought it to me and I said, yes, let's read it. Roughly, short, that's a succinct interpretation. Bill, what inspired you to recommend this book, and what is something you love about it?
I was at the launch of the book at TESLACon several years ago, and met Sean, and we kind of hit it off then. And I've gone to one of his readings at a local bookstore, read both of the Lord Bobbins books. My wife has read his mystery novel, The Single Twin, and absolutely adores it.
Oh, lovely.
We've actually given it to several friends as gifts too. So that was sort of how I was introduced to Sean, and I just really enjoyed his writing. I think one of the things that it's interesting, one of the things that stands out for me about Lord Bobbins and the Romanian Ruckus is I identify a little bit more with Nicodemus Clark, because like him, I'm kind of feeling grizzled and world weary these days. I think we all are.
Yes.
But I think the Dolly Shaw was the slightly more compelling character. So that's kind of an interesting dichotomy there. Is, I felt like I was more like Clark and sort of more could see through his eyes more easily, but but I really enjoyed reading the parts with Dolly in them. I think a little bit more. So, and it was just a rollicking good adventure.
Absolutely.
And if I may say, the second book, Lord Bobbins and the Dome of Light, is even more fun.
Even more. Excellent.
Even more fun. Yeah, more. I think a more interesting dilemma, a more interesting adventure in that story than the first one. So, well done, Sean.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. All right, so you all, maybe not all of you know, but many of you know what comes next. And I'll give you all a moment. But this is when I ask you to ask Sean Little, our guest author, any burning questions that you might have. I will probably harass our authors first, as I love to do. I know, I love the look on Karen's face, but she knows I'm shameless and cheeky. So I normally have you go around and ask any questions that you may have. If you don't have a question, you can just say something nice. That works too. So, Karen, have you thought of a question? No. She's taking notes. All right. Robert, do you have a question? Oh, Cindy has a question. Robert, you may have been saved by Cindy. Cindy, do you have a question?
Oh, yes, I was just wondering where you got the inspiration or how you came up with a nether crystal, because I found that quite interesting. It's quite divergent from a lot of things in steampunk. So, you know, why you decided to work that in?
Well, when I first started trying to write a Testacon novel, and it was from the perspective of Lord Bobbins, it was going to be a global battle for this energy source that they discovered. In fact, actually, the story kind of started with the mine explosion. I just thought it would be interesting to get, I don't want to call it magic, because for lack of a better term, it is magical. It is a power source. I wanted something that wasn't as nailed down as like fossil fuels or steam or something like that. I wanted something that was a little more esoteric. And the nether crystal, just, it was an interesting idea that popped into my head that, you know, if we had this kind of thing, could it make lasers? I basically was trying to figure out a way to bypass fossil fuel. And that's where I came up with a crystal that generated energy.
It's a bit like dilithium crystals. We never understand them. We just accept them.
Mm-hmm.
True.
It's
and
lovely.
I do like how it started off in the second book with the artifact.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only on chapter 4. It's sitting in front of me, waiting to be read.
Oh, excellent. Oh, good. Cindy, thank you. Sean, just a quick question from me. These books sort of incorporate some of the plot elements that are happening at Testacon, or they at least dovetail a bit. I have not read book 2, but I did attend last year's Testacon. How much of the book trickled into the story of Testacon last year and vice versa?
Not a ton. Eric would like a novelization of every Testacon. If you talk to him, he would like every Testacon storyline to be novelized. But to me, that's kind of overkill. I mean, Testacon is its own magical experience, and if you're not there, you're not going to fully understand it. So I needed something that would be adjacent to Testacon, but not Testacon itself. I need something that somebody who'd never been to Testacon could pick up and understand. But at the same time, you don't want to not reward the people who go to Testacon, because that's the whole point of the book, is that it is more Testacon. It's Testacon when Testacon isn't running.
I love that. That is how it felt to me reading the first book. And I know that some of these characters do appear in a Testacon setting, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So very well done, sir. Thank you. All right. Let's see, Robert, did you have a question for our author? author to author.
Actually, I do. It's about the very beginning of the first book, right after Demas takes care of the poker players. He is suddenly chased by 3 much more menacing thugs and only escapes them because Lord Bobbins shows up. Is this just a general reference to the fact that Demas has done some sketchy things in his past that people would like to catch up with him for? Or is this something that leads into a future story? Or is it possible that Bobbins sent those thugs?
I think in my mindset, it was actually Bobbins sending those thugs. He was trying to secure him and needed a way to test him. So,
which makes a great deal of sense.
Yes. Yeah.
And it worked. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Lovely. And Mr. Little, Robert writes some wonderful comic steampunk novels that frankly, I highly recommend them to everyone. So I'm just going to recommend them to you too. So that's how I am.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Robert. All right, Karen, you know it's coming. The reprieve has ended.
I haven't been to TeslaCon, so it's been interesting hearing this stuff because obviously does TeslaCon have its own little like story, but this is the theme and this is the story. Okay, so the Romanian werewolves, was that part of the TeslaCon, or did you decide to do it separately? Or
the year that this book came out, TeslaCon's theme was something having to do with Transylvania, I think.
Okay, yep. Okay, that makes sense there. And you talked about writer's block before, but there's a difference between writer's block and the general depressive malaise that we've been having this year. And has that affected you writing? Because I've really been getting blood out of a stone this year, but then again, I get anxiety and PTSD, so it's been a bad year. Does it affect you? Like, because a lot of writers are saying this year's been real tough.
Big time.
Getting those,
Big time. My biggest problem is that when I became a homeowner, it became very difficult to write at home, because when you're at home, there's laundry to be done, there's vacuuming, there's dishes to be done, the kid needs something, the cat needs something, the dog needs something. I could be outside mowing the lawn, I could be raking leaves. There's always something else to be done. So as Bill well knows, I go right at Culver's, which is a local restaurant, a fast food place. I have a booth there. They know me. Like, the people at Culver's know me by name. It's kind of sad.
No, I understand that. The Hague's chocolate know me.
Yeah. I have to go right at Culver's, and that's where I've been most productive. In fact, actually, the second book in the series I wrote in 24 days, because the first,
envy.
6 to 8 hours a day at Culver's, just cranked it out. I had an outline and it went really well. So I knew where it was going, and I knew that what I had to do with it. So it was fast. But this year, given that I can't really leave the house, and given that the kids have been home and plus I've been working a third shift job for the last 10 months, that's just crushing me. This has been a very difficult year. I have not written a whole ton. I've got, my writing has gone from 15, 20 pages at a crack to 2 paragraphs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It seems that that's what most write. Well, not all, but most are. I write at home anyway. But my hubby's been home and my daughter's been home, so I get no spare time to myself. So it's very hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hearing that all over the board. It's our routines have been thrown off, and writing well and writing a lot is a lot about routine. I mean, Stephen King talks about it, and other writers talk about it.
I had a good routine until this all happened.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by how other writers write, and like Anthony Trollope is a great example. Anthony Trollope got up every morning at 4 a.m. and he wrote from 4:30 to 9 every day. And then at 9 o'clock on the nose, he put his pen down, he walked out, he went to work, he was a postman. and he worked for the British Postal Service, and then that was it. And then the next morning, 4:30, and if he finished a book at 7 o'clock, he wrote the end and opened the next notebook and started the next book. You know, if he was in the middle of a sentence at 9 o'clock, pen down, out the door. You know, and that's how he worked. You know, Roald Dahl had a great little writing shed on his property, and he would go and he would had a chair and a board, and it was lovely. There's actually video of it that you can see on YouTube. Yeah. So routine, so important to that.
Yeah. I'd get up in the morning when my daughter was at school, and she'd go to school, come home, I'd write until she'd pick up time, and then usually somewhere at like 11 o'clock midnight, the brain starts going again. So I'd write a few little ideas, and then, but that's just, you know, she's finished school and everyone's home, and yeah, it's hard.
It's a rough time. Thank you, Karen. That's an excellent question, and something that so many artists are struggling with right now in all the arts, right? Sean, I do have a question for you though. We have a Culver's here. It's been imported to the Sonoran Desert, and so I'm like this much familiar with them, mostly for their cheese curds. Oh dear, it's a weakness, deep weakness I have. What is it that you sustain yourself with when you can be there writing? Do you just drink tea all day?
Mountain Dew, Diet Mountain Dew.
Diet Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
That is your writerly fuel.
I don't do coffee. I don't do tea, which I know is probably a sin in some steampunk circles. There's Cindy. Oh, poor Cindy. I've offended her greatly.
We're all tea drinkers here. It's all right.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not a fan of hot beverages. I don't like them. I would rather be able to drink what I'm drinking rather than, you know, having to wait for it to cool down or sipping it or what have you. So yeah, Diet Mountain Dew, Diet Coke. My chosen beverage of choice is Coke Zero, but unfortunately Culver's does not do Coke products.
Oh no, they need to sponsor you with Coke Zero. Really...
I have been working for a Culver sponsorship for several years.
Clearly. We'll all write them letters. Yes. Please sponsor Mr. Little. Although you live in Wisconsin, how do you not enjoy hot beverages? It's cold there all the time. It's magic. Sorry.
I guess you just get desensitized to it.
Oh.
I know. I saw you have two people from Adelaide.
Yes.
And my best friend in the world lives in Adelaide. She is great. But I always give her crap because she talks about how cold it is down there, and it's like
it's
40
hot.
degrees. Yeah, well, it's
boiling hot.
Well, it is now. But she, you know, when I'm in summer and she's in winter, she talks about how cold it is, and I said, well, how cold is it? It's like 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Shut up.
It's not cold. If it gets down to 1, I get excited.
Yeah.
And that's in Celsius.
Yeah, in Wisconsin.
That's Celsius. Yes, it's usually about 9 or 8.
Yeah, in Wisconsin, it's not cold until it's 20 degrees.
What's that in Celsius?
I don't know. Let's see. 20 degrees is 12 degrees below freezing. So
minus 12.
Yeah, minus 12.
We might even know your friend. You never know.
Veronica Garrett is her name. Veronica with a K. She's a nurse.
Does she do any fandom at all or steampunk?
Yeah. She's a big board game player.
Because the name vaguely sounds familiar.
Her husband is Brendan. He's a big dude.
Do they have like sell stuff as well to do with games? No. It's Adelaide. It's small. We'll probably know them.
Yeah, you bump into them eventually.
Oh, that's lovely.
She's very tall and has multicolored hair.
I've always assumed that Adelaide is a big city, and now you're saying it's small. Is it a metropolis?
It's about 1 million people.
Oh.
So to me, it's like a big country town because I used to live in Brisbane, which I don't want to go back to because it's just, it's too big. And if we visit Melbourne and Sydney, it's like you visit for a weekend, you hightail it back home. I love Adelaide because it's big enough and we have arts festivals and races and all sorts of stuff like that. But it's also still really it's a country town at heart, if that makes sense. People are more laid back and chat to you, whereas I don't do that interstate. So.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Sean. So everyone's had a moment to cogitate and think of some questions. Do you have any other questions? Please raise your hands, or hit the reaction emoji. Lady June Squirrel has a question. Cindy has another.
It's not a question. It's a couple of quotes that I highlighted. One of them in particular, with all the fact that we can't travel now, but the best thing to do is to put out of your mind and focus on relaxing when you're traveling. Lots of folks get their dander up when they travel, and they try to control too much of an uncomfortable situation. That's me. They want to be the first ones on the train and the first ones off, and they want to have lunch prepared by somebody else exactly the way they'd have it at home. Travel doesn't work that way, and it shouldn't work that way. Why travel if you're just trying to replicate your own home? Just sit back and enjoy the ride. And then Clark clapped his hand on Bobbins' shoulder. Buck up, my lord, it only gets worse from here.
I love those quotes. Those are fantastic quotes. Thank you, Lady June Squirrel. And also lovely moments in the story. Cindy, you raised your hand. Another question.
Yes. Well, not being familiar with TeslaCon and a lot of it, what is Swarm?
Oh, what is Swarm?
What is Swarm? I'm assuming that's part of TeslaCon.
It is.
Swarm is basically the bad guys. If you envision Lord Bobbins as G.I. Joe, Swarm is Cobra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does Swarm stand for anything?
It does. I don't remember what it does. Bill probably knows.
Bill, do you remember? I don't.
I'm afraid I don't remember what it is either. I sometimes wear purple and black outfits, and people always coming up to me and saying, "Oh, you're in Swarm." I said, "No, I just like the colors. Sorry."
So
that's their official colors. They're the minions of Bobbins' nemesis, who is Dr. Procticus.
So, and a fun thing about TeslaCon, for those who have not attended, Lord Bobbins releases a color chart every year before the convention starts, and he has the good guy faction colors and the Swarm faction colors. And so many people do actually build costumes around those colors, and he does release them about a year in advance. So you have enough time to build costumes if you wish. It's quite marvelous. I never have built color costumes to that color chart. So like Bill, I've occasionally found myself in the Swarm faction without intending to be. So, but Dr. Procticus is a real pip who puts, I have to tell you something terrible. He puts lemon and milk in his tea so that it curdles. Yeah, he's a madman. All right, any other questions for the author? Robin.
Hold on, I just need to. Why would you make cheese and tea?
He's a madman.
Actually, why would you make buttermilk? Quick pass buttermilk. Ay, Dios mío. I had a few questions. The first one is Bobbins the main dirigible for it? Is it named after Inspector Morse?
Yes. I'm a big Colin Dexter fan, so yeah.
That's lovely.
Yes, which I know about because there's a prequel series that Amazon Prime has that's named after his first name, which is Endeavor, which is set in the 1970s, and it's lovely.
I like that Quaker tradition of giving children names of attributes too. When I first started teaching high school many years ago, I had a girl in my class, and her name was Hope, and she had two sisters, Faith and Charity. And I said, "Are your parents Quakers by any chance?" And they were. So.
Where's our Charity? Charity must be at work, huh?
She must be at work. Normally she's here.
I don't think she's not a Quaker, is she?
I don't think so.
We'll have to ask her.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, that's lovely.
And my other question is, because it's the something happened with shepherd's pie. Is Bobbins on team beef or is he on team lamb?
You would have to ask him.
Well,
some things I just go for the joke, and I have no idea about the backstory.
Was that something he actually said? Because we had him on Friday, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, there's a person here."
But like I said, I spent a lot of time with Eric, more than most people should, and I just got really used to his mannerisms and his beats, and just I pick up on cadence. I'm one of those guys who, if I'm around somebody with an accent too long, I start talking in that accent. Karen knows. Being around an Australian, and all of a sudden you just start using Australian idioms and things like that. I'm that kind of guy, so I write for other characters very, very easily. It just pops into my head, and I can usually, if you give me a couple hours with somebody, I can usually fake what they sound like.
So I had a question in there that I think might have lost a bit, but I do want to say that whilst I've forgotten my question, you remind me so much how reading the story, I felt like I could hear Lord Bobbins' voice. He really did capture his cadence beautifully.
It's easy because he's so defined and he's so persnickety, and he has a very distinct manner of speaking and a very distinct rhythm and a cadence, and that's easy when that happens. If you just try to write for some guy off the street, it's difficult. But if somebody has such a flamboyant and over the top persona, the voice usually is found pretty quickly.
He's very rooted in that character. He's been playing it since for almost 10 years now, actually.
A little more than that, yeah.
Yeah, 11-ish.
11 or 12, yeah.
Deborah has a question for you. When will book 3 be released?
That is a darn fine question. It's done. It's literally sitting on my hard drive. I can see it on my desktop. We don't have a cover for it yet. Had TeslaCon been able to go on this year, there was a good chance it would have come out this year. But at the same time, there's really one of the big problems that Steampunk has is just the fan base does not buy a ton of books. It's very, very difficult to sell these books. And honestly, I don't think either of these 2 books has sold more than 200 copies. So, would I put one out? Yeah. I mean, if you email me, hell, I'll send you a copy I'll send you a PDF of it if you really want. But it's a question. I don't know. It might not see life in paperback. I might just put it up on Wattpad for free. I don't know what's going on with it at this point.
Well, Mr. Little, if you decide that you would like to release it, I know that everyone here would like to read it. We do buy books. All of us bought your book. So we do buy them. Maybe we are the last holdouts. We're the stalwart 25 who buy the Steampunk books. As Deborah says, she would happily buy one. I think we'd all rather give you money for it than just take it for free.
I always have a question because I get a lot of things on Kindle Unlimited. Do you get any money from that? A tiny bit. Tiny
bits.
But if I would be buying it as a ebook anyway, so you probably wouldn't get even much more. So.
Yeah, Kindle Unlimited is kind of it's a good deal for people who aren't really well known because it gives people a chance to at least read their stuff.
I read a lot of it.
The most important thing about any book is reviews. If Amazon doesn't even treat your book as if it exists until it hits 50 reviews. So, the more reviews you get, the more likely it is to be a success, the more likely it is to get included with mailers and marketing material and start actually taking off. That was actually the big thing for me in my post-apocalyptic novels. I have a book out called After Everyone Died, which is the story of a teenager who just happens to be immune from a viral apocalypse. And he ends up being stuck in southern Wisconsin alone and has to survive a winter. And, I didn't expect anything of this book. I wrote it as an experiment, really, because I'd never written anything in the first person before. And for some reason, that book took off. That it found the right audience, and all of a sudden, it sold. I think it's over 25,000 copies at this point. Most of them on Kindle. But it wouldn't have taken off until it wouldn't have taken off as big as it had if it hadn't gotten to 50 reviews. I know that much. Once it got to 50 reviews, it started getting included in mailers and other things like that. And so that series is actually doing fairly well. But yeah, it's a struggle. It's tough.
So obviously one of the things we can do for you is to all go out and review this book and to tell all of our friends to read it and share it with people. Is there any other way that we can support you as an author? Do you have a website, a Patreon, anything like that?
I have a Facebook page, and that's about it. Anything that pops up will be on Facebook, or else I have a Twitter account. But I don't hide online. I'm easy to find. You can find me.
All right, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sean. I see Robert left as well, so I apologize. Sean, do you have anything coming out soon that may not be steampunk, but we might like to read it?
Nothing that's coming out soon. I do have this. This came out last year. It's called The Single Twin. I know it's probably showing up backwards. I don't, but it's a mystery novel, modern day, set in Chicago, about a couple of guys who are socially awkward and really just the only thing they can do with themselves is solve mysteries. They're basically useless otherwise. One guy is a milquetoast, nothing of a human being, and the other guy is a misanthrope. He hates everyone, but they do what they do well. This book actually got optioned by Barry Josephson Entertainment back in March.
Oh.
If you don't know Barry Josephson was the people who produced the TV show Bones, the mystery series. And so they are trying to get it made into a TV series right now. It is very unlikely that will happen because it's Hollywood, and Hollywood is difficult to deal with, but they're working on it. And I actually just got an email from the guy, their TV guy, a guy by the name of Dan, a couple of weeks ago, and Dan said, "Hey, it's not dead in the water. COVID kind of slowed everything down." He said, "But I got meetings." He said, "I'm pitching it. We're working." So we'll see. I actually wrote that book specifically with an actor friend of mine in the title role of Abe. The two main characters are Abe and Duff, and Abe Allard was really meant to be a role for my buddy Bob Clendenin. And if you don't know Bob was on let's see, he's been on a bunch of stuff. He's a character actor. He shows up in the background of stuff a lot. He was the oncologist on the TV show Scrubs.
Oh, yes.
Up occasionally, yeah. And he was in the TV show Cougar Town as the neighbor Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he was the Undertaker in the Hulu show Quick Draw. So I wrote the character of Abe Allard for my buddy Bob, and hopefully, if it gets made into a TV series, he'll be the one playing Abe. But we'll see.
Fingers crossed for
Yeah, fingers
everyone.
crossed.
That's lovely.
It's a long shot, but it's out there.
So before we wrap up, Bill and I do have some capsule reviews to share with all of you for some other fun steampunk reads going into the future. Sean, is there anything you'd like to recommend to us that we might not have heard of that you love to read?
Steampunk based or otherwise?
We'll take anything. We're avid readers.
Well, I don't know. I hope everybody has read some of Ben Aronovich's series, the Rivers of London Mysteries. Yeah, okay, a couple of you. Those are excellent. Also, let me slide over here. This is a really twisted book. It's interesting. It's called The Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break. It's a Minotaur is working as a short order cook in a southern diner. It's very, very weird and very esoteric. It is Alton Brown's favorite novel. I know that much. And then the other one would be, if you have not read Erskine Childers, The Riddle of the Sands. That's an excellent book.
Thank you so much. Those all sound really spiffing, and I'll add them to my reading list. December's a good month to read. It's cold everywhere except Adelaide, where it's broiling. So, all right. So, Bill, would you like to share your capsule interview review?
Sure. My book for this month is called Flaming Zeppelins, written by Joe Lansdale. Published by Tachyon Press, a small press out of, I think, Seattle. If you're familiar at all with Joe Lansdale, Joe wrote the story that the film Bubba Hotep was based on. He writes pretty wacky stuff generally, and Flaming Zeppelins is no exception. It starts out with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in a Zeppelin heading to Japan because they're going to perform there. The only problem is Buffalo Bill's had an accident, and so his head is in a jar and his body is preserved somewhere else. They've made a mechanical body for him. It's probably easier to talk about what isn't in this book rather than what is. At least it would be shorter. This is the subtitle of this book is Flaming Zeppelins: The Adventures of Ned the Seal. So the first part of the book, it's actually two sort of novellas put together. The first part takes place mostly on what is the island of Dr. Moreau, essentially. And you have these characters from the Wild West show, Buffalo Bill, Wild Bill Hickok, Annie Oakley, Sitting Bull are all characters who end up on this island with all these animal men, animal people. There's Captain Bimo and his submarine, the Naughty Lass, obviously not wanting to run into trouble with a large corporation run by a mouse that rhymes with Bisney. But it's crazy. And then the second part, tying in with TeslaCon, is kind of War of the Worlds, and several of the characters from the first part make it into the second part, and you also add H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, and Ned the Seal survives and makes it through to the other one. Ned is an intelligent seal who can't speak, but has sort of thumbs added to his flippers, and he can write. So he writes notes to people, and is fond of fish, as most seals are. This is a crazy book. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely not a serious steampunk book, but there are a lot of steampunk elements in it.
Excellent.
I encourage you to check it out. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
Thank you, Bill. That was lovely. And I obviously have to read this now, Ned the Seal. The book I would like to recommend to all of you is much less silly than that, although silly is normally my personal favorite. This month I read not only the wonderful book by Mr. Little, but I also read Manners and Monsters by Tilly Wallace. It's a lovely little steampunk adjacent novel set in mythical Regency on a world not unlike Earth, but not precisely Earth. There is magic and monsters, and there is a mystery story at the heart of this. It's a bit like a cozy mystery with a hint of romance. I think if you like Gail Carriger, you will like this. If you like Robert's books, you are likely to enjoy this, but it's not really a comic novel, so it's a much more serious approach to the stories, or at least more earnest, I suppose. I found it to be a real page turner. I loved the central character. She's a lovely, smart, thoughtful, insightful character. She does have a bit of romantic inclination towards her partner, but it's, ooh, they don't like each other, but they do like each other sort of thing going on there. Her mum is a very important figure in the magical scene in this alternative England. And there is zombieism, but not like you've seen it before. So it's not a lot of shuffling monsters. But I will warn you that zombies are present in this story, but they are intelligent creatures. So I don't want to give too much away. I won't tell you the ending of the mystery, but I will say if you like Regency fantasy, you like a little bit of mystery, you like some discussion of manners and etiquette and the class differences, but you're also very keen on women's suffrage, this book will be a good read for you. So, and it's part of a series. The second book is already out. That one's called Galvanism and Ghouls. I'm excited. Frankenstein is involved. Should be really grand. Karen, you're raising your hands. You've got some thoughts. No, you don't. You're just excited. All right.
No, saying I just looked it up and ordered it, and looks like there's 3 of them.
Oh yes, I didn't know if the third one was out yet, but
it looks like there is Ghouls and something.
All right, good, excellent. So, wonderful series to tide you away over December until we come back in January with our January read, which I'm going to tell you what it is right now so that Karen can order it and read it. That is the novel Witchmark by C.L. Polk. Thank you, Bill. Bill recommended this to us, and it's been on my reading to read list. I'm very excited to read this book with all of you. We are going to try and have the author guest, but I can't promise anything. So we shall see. In the meantime, thank you all for being here, but a special thank you to our author guest, Mr. Little. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your wonderful books. They are so good. I wish you the very best. Everyone, you know your homework. Go forth and write a review of Mr. Little's book. Recommend his books to someone else. My goal is to get more than 200 copies of this book sold. So please go and help sell some books by reviewing some books. We do want our steampunk authors to keep writing. And with that, I wish you all we've got a question. We do have a question. Mr. Little, if you need to go, of course, we won't keep you. But if you can stay, I'd like to talk to you after. So it's at your leisure. But we have a question from Robin. Do we want to have an informal Zoom after Christmas for the 7th Invisible Library book? Maybe. Robin, I could be convinced. We will talk. I actually do have been cogitating. It is the book holiday coming, which is my favorite holiday. Let me know if you all would like to do a book exchange amongst book club members. So we can arrange that for those who wish to.
No, because I only read ebooks because of my eyes and everything, so I can't exchange.
No, but we could send you a digital book, or I could anyway.
Well, yes, but I guess I could send other people digital books.
Yes, you could. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
And think about it. It's not anything you have to commit to. Yes, Bill, announce the February book. Absolutely.
The February book will be Baba Ali and the Clockwork Jinn.
We read that.
Danielle Ackley McPhail and Day El Mohammed.
We read that.
We're going to read it again because we're going to get the author as a guest. So, and we read it, June, and you and I and Barbara and Beatrix and Crowley has read it, but I don't think anyone else in book club here online has read it. So we'll get to be very knowledgeable. So, and we'll get to meet the author and the editor.
Yeah, I'm unclear
Can you
about
repeat
their,
that? I
the
didn't get it.
relationship with Baba Ali, B-A-B-A, Ali, A-L-I, and the Clockwork Djinn, D-J-I-N-N. The publisher is Paper Phoenix Press, if that helps. I'm unclear on the relationship between the two women, but they are both going to be present. I'm not sure if one's the editor and one's the author, or they're both authors, how that worked, but they both agreed to be there for February.
Excellent, thank you. And Bill has made that arrangement, so we'll be having the opportunity to speak with them, which is something we couldn't do in our in-person book club. And yes, a few of us have read it, but I think a lot of you haven't, so it'll be a nice opportunity to enjoy this book. So thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to release you from book club, and